Okay, this is from my book, Holy Grail Wisdom Quotes from E.P. Rogers. We're going in alphabetical order. A quick quote by Linda Darling Hammond. She's an educator, wrote a good book, Flat World in Education. She said basically, if we were to teach children the skills we teach in school, she said, if we taught babies how to talk, as most skills are taught in school, we would teach them to memorize a list of sounds in a predetermined order and then to practice them alone in a closet. That's a great point. Public schools are designed to be worthless, okay? People should not respect public schools. You should not send your children to a public school. They hate your children, okay? Anybody that drugs children for ADHD and who, makes them memorize meaningless, worthless lists of words, does so-called, castration-affirming surgery on them. It's insane. It's not even bad. It's insane, okay? And then they have questionnaires and they try to get the children to denounce their families. They're evil, okay? Let's just come out and say it. Unless you're willing to say that, you can't make anything better. Public schools are evil and they hate children. That's an important point to understand, okay? All right, her next quote. Recognizing a correct answer out of a predetermined list of responses is fundamentally different from the act of reading or writing or speaking or reasoning or dancing or anything else that humans do in the real world. And that's absolutely correct. Public schools are designed to waste the children's time, make everything meaningless, to give them a sense of despair, okay, to get them interested in promiscuity and drugs. That's the purpose of a public school, to make their life meaningless, to make them into atheists, to make them think that life is meaningless. And that is all to weaken them. Public schools do not want people growing up to be devout Christians, because then they're going to get married young and have a big family, and they're going to be strong in their conscience, and their allegiance is going to be to God instead of some puppet ruler, okay? So anyways, next, now we're going to talk about Charles Darwin. So he's the big event for tonight. Charles Darwin, I for one must be content to remain an agnostic, which is like saying he's an atheist in the 1800s. Okay, Theodosius Dobzhansky, he said, nothing in biology makes sense except in light of evolution. But I would say nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of God. And I was an A-plus student in evolutionary biology at Stanford University. And I can tell you, evolution is so full of BS, you don't even understand it. It is used in the public school system in the USA as a religion. And it is handled as a religion. Let's see, what about Darwin? A lot of the stuff you've probably heard before if you studied anything about Darwin. And I got a lot of notes on Darwin. Most of it we're not going to talk about, because unless you're really interested in the whole history of it, you're not going to care. Okay, here's a funny quote from Ann Coulter in her book called Godless. She said, far from showing gradual change with one species slowly giving way to another, as Darwin hypothesized, the fossil record showed vast numbers of new species suddenly appearing out of nowhere, remaining largely unchanged for millions of years, and then disappearing, almost like there was a big flood or something. Okay. Dennis Noble, he's still got some lectures on the internet, on YouTube, and I like what he said. He basically said that, DNA is like digital code on a music CD, and it's unlikely to be improved if you scratch it. Okay, it's not going to be improved by random mutations. I would say if you scratch a paperclip on a music CD, you're not going to improve Mozart. It's BS. Okay, they emphasized Darwin over Wallace because Wallace emphasized cooperation. Darwin emphasized the Herbert Spencer concept of survival of the fittest. And England loved all this stuff because they could then claim they are the fittest and that the Irish are inferior, the people from India are inferior, and therefore England would claim, because they believe that they should be slaves for them. And, my ancestors were basically handled as slaves by the English, okay? Not good. Perry Marshall wrote a good book about evolutionary biology called Evolution 2.0. The big name evolutionary biologists, writers and stuff are people like Douglas Axe, Michael Behe, Stephen Meyer. Okay, let's see here. Oh, yeah, I basically see the public schools as like a religion. Darwin is the founder of the religion. The modern universities are the churches. College professors are the priests of evolutionary religion. Richard Dawkins is the head of the Evolution Inquisition. In fact, intelligent design proponents are treated as heretics. They fire them from their jobs. Okay, it's ridiculous. Transitional fossils like Archaeopteryx are the holy relics. Field biologists who died during doing research like Diane Fossey with the gorillas, She is, they're martyrs. Pepper Moss, Piltdown Man, and the Heckle drawings are just hoaxes of evolutionary biology. Okay. Darwin did say his mother was essential, that she was the making of me. She was so true, so sure of me, and I felt I had someone to live for, someone I must not disappoint. Yep, a good mother makes a big difference in a boy's life. I've seen that a lot of times when the young guy is kind of a screw up and his mother sort of saves his butt. I can tell you my older brother was a bit of a irresponsible, wild guy when he was young, and he was having a hard time getting into law school. My mom just went to the law school and said, look, I will pay his tuition right now. Here's the check, the entire year, full tuition. Just take him. He'll do well. And he actually ended up doing real well. He had dyslexia, but once he got the computer spell checker, he did very well because he had all the other attributes. He's a tall, good-looking guy, very articulate and smooth, a smooth operator, very handsome. He was a very skillful lawyer. Okay, Charles Darwin. Selfish and contentious people will not cohere, and without coherence, nothing can be effected. A tribe rich in the above qualities would spread and be victorious over other tribes. So what Charles Darwin is saying is, if a group of people were cooperative with each other and helped each other, they would have great success over other people who are not cooperative and who don't help each other. Okay, well, that's an important thing to realize. And I've seen that amongst ethnic groups. If the ethnic group helps each other, they do better. Okay. There is, however, no doubt that the various races, Charles Darwin, when carefully compared and measured, differ from each other much. They differ in constitution and acclimatization and in liability to diseases, in mental characteristics, in emotional characteristics. Okay, so Charles Darwin really believed there was a big difference between all the different groups of people. Let's see. They believed the Irish were stupid and inferior. Okay, Charles Darwin quotes continued. What makes a man a discoverer? The art consists in habitually searching for the causes and meaning of everything which occurs. Many men who are very clever, much cleverer than the discoverers, never originate anything. Yeah, that's been my experience in medicine. I know some guys with really high IQs, but they don't care. They're not interested in discovering anything. They're interested in making sure they're making money, and they just want to go home. They could give a rat's tail about any of these things. Okay, Charles Darwin, without speculation, there is no good and original observation. Yeah, you constantly have to be developing a theory in order to care about the details. Charles Darwin, even people who aren't geniuses can outthink the rest of mankind if they develop certain thinking habits. From my early youth, I have had the strongest desire to understand or explain whatever I observed, to group all the facts under some general laws. Science consists in grouping facts so that the general laws or conclusions can be drawn from them. My mind seems to have become a kind of machine for grinding out general laws from a large collection of facts. In my simplicity, I remember wondering why every gentleman did not want to become an ornithologist. The voyage of the Beagle has been by far the most important event in my life. The question of whether there exists a creator and a ruler of the universe has been answered in the affirmative by some of the highest intellects that have ever existed. A monkey, after getting drunk on brandy, would never again touch it, thus showing that the monkey is much wiser than most men. The chief distinction in the intellectual powers of the two sexes is shown by man's attaining to a higher eminence in whatever he takes up than the woman. The average mental power in a man must be above that of a woman. No woman has ever contributed a single profound, lasting idea to the entire world. That's the words of Charles Darwin, okay? So I think that's funny. You know, they always emphasize Charles Darwin, but they never include that quote. They never include the other quote about what he thought about the different ethnic groups. Okay, so yeah, he's totally chauvinistic. Okay, another quote from Charles Darwin. Man is more courageous, more pugnacious, more energetic than woman, and he has more inventive genius. Okay, Darwin continues. At some future period, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate the savage races. Excepting in the case of man himself, hardly anyone is so ignorant to allow his worst animals to breed. So Charles Darwin, he, sort of typified the English view that the people of England were superior to the people of other countries. And so a lot of Americans are real stupid. They don't understand this stuff. But when people become very rich and very powerful, as England was compared to Ireland and compared to India, they start to think that they are superior to them in other ways. And they start to think that they have the right to rule them as slaves. That's just how it is. That's part of human nature. That's how Roman emperors were as well. And people should be aware of that. And that's why there has to be checks and balances on rulers, or otherwise they behave very badly. Darwin on speciation. Man is descended from a hairy-tailed quadruped, probably arboreal in its habits, a common ancestor with chimps, for example. And like I said, my wife's family might have arrived from a common ancestor with chimps, but my family was created in the image of God. Okay, the species that survives is the one best able to adapt to the changing environment. The most important factor in survival is neither intelligence nor strength, but adaptability. Geology does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain, and this is perhaps the most obvious and serious objection which can be urged against the theory. Yeah, there is the record of the rock doesn't show it. Not one change of species into another is on record. We cannot prove that a single species has been changed. Yes, that is correct. That's why a big part of why evolutionary theory is bogus for explaining large-scale variation. Okay, microevolution or variety within a species, that is known. You can breed dogs to be quite different from each other, but you can't turn a cat into a dog. You can't turn a horse into a dolphin, okay? It just doesn't happen. Charles Darwin. Why, if species have descended from other species by insensibly fine gradations, do we not see everywhere innumerable transitional forms? Yes, good point. To suppose the eye could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree. Charles Darwin. Okay, another point I would make about Darwinism is look at the quote from Lennox. He said, basically, imagine you were walking on the beach and you saw your name written in the sand. Okay, you know that an intelligent person who is literate with intention wrote your name on the sand. The ocean's not going to do that. So if somebody can write your name 5, 10 letters, and you know it's an intelligent person who did that, who's literate, how can you explain the human genome, the DNA code? It's 3.3 billion base pairs of complex chemistry written perfectly so that you can create all these living creatures. What level of knowledge and information needed to be present to do that? The smartest people in the world dedicate their entire life, 50 years, on studying one little thing in biology to win a Nobel Prize. So what makes you think that the DNA code could write itself? It's ridiculous. So anyways, that's the quotes for today. Hopefully that was helpful.